Everybody, welcome back to FDRA's Footwear Flash Briefing. I'm Andy Polk here with Matt Priest. Matt, over the last several days, we've seen competing bills in the Senate over additional funding. So tell us where we're at with the latest round of economic stimulus.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Late last week, we saw Senate Republicans trying to inject $250 billion more into the SBA loans that are out there to protect paychecks, knowing that those are drying up very quickly, even though money seems to be flowing slowly. The Democrats in the Senate countered that with a proposal to inject similar amounts of funding into the front lines and into hospitals who most need it, particularly in the Northeast, where we've seen the coronavirus spiral. And both initiatives failed. And so now, as we head towards the end of the recess, the Easter Passover recess, and Congress is back in session on Monday, the 20th, we'll have to see which proposal takes shape and if they'll instead pivot towards a fourth bill that's solely focused on infrastructure.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And one thing we should say too is that $250 billion, as the politics continues and it goes down the line, that may increase as the need increases. So they'll be very agile in real time to add another couple, 50 billion, 100 billion here or there, likely. But for the infrastructure bill, we've been talking about infrastructure for years in Washington, D.C. It's been at least 5 or 10 years since the last major infrastructure bill to help with transportation and building roads. A lot of people in Washington see that as a good spend for infrastructure because it gets projects going, it gets blue collar jobs going, from construction to helping with this new world we're going to have with e-commerce, efficient delivery, et cetera. So, when we're looking at that, what's the conversation around what size that would be and how that would work? And is it a serious push that we're seeing?
I think it is a serious push because I think you have President Trump and House Democrats in particular that have talked about infrastructure spending for some time, and maybe the ability to set aside political differences and come around some kind of package for infrastructure. The problem with infrastructure spending, as you know, Andy, having been up the Hill for so many years, is that this whole talk on shovel-ready projects, it takes so much time for that funding to filter down. In fact, we haven't seen really a hesitation on behalf of lawmakers to cut checks. That's not the problem. They're willing to spend as much money as they think it takes. I mean, multiple trillions of dollars have already been allocated and authorized. The problem is it just takes so long to filter down to people who need it most, whether it's a check that's being cut directly to someone in need, or it's a loan program that's being propped up by the SBA or the Treasury Department, or it's a quote unquote shovel-ready project that is being funded by the federal government in the infrastructure space. None of that helps with something that's closed down right this second.
Right.
And so the government, it does a great job of cutting checks. It does a lousy job of getting that money quickly into the system.
3 words: environmental impact assessment. As you and I both know, can take years for infrastructure to go through unless
Thanks, heel splitter.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk a bit about our industry right now. The unfortunate nature of the lack of demand, basically bottoming out, means that many of our footwear workers are furloughed at home, and our thoughts and prayers are with them at this time, during a difficult time. What are you hearing from executives and CEOs right now about the current state of our industry?
Yeah, all the executives and CEOs that I speak with and the broader footwear community knows that we're trying to find as much cash as we possibly can. That's led us to push for duty deferment, which the Trump administration seems so hell-bent on not doing at this point in time, or some kind of tax holiday or duty holiday. They seem more inclined to want to tax American consumers on imports as much as they possibly can. That's frustrating, but in the meantime, our members are looking for ways to save cash, and that is meant for low-income workers. And so we have launched an initiative, Andy, where we are ensuring that furloughed workers of FDRA member companies are still engaged and still plugged in by providing us their personal contact details so that they can be on working group calls and be joining webinars and be just accessing the data and information necessary for them to stay up to speed as to what's happening in the industry, so that, Lord willing, when they come back to work in the summer and their job's still there, they need to be up and running and up to speed in all things footwear industry related, that they've been plugged into the stream of consciousness that is FDRA and that's flowing into their systems. And so we are focused on this initiative. We encourage folks to go to fdra.org or shoot a note to info@fdra.org and we'll make sure that you and your personal information is captured so that you can still be a part of the FDRA family, even though you might be furloughed.
Great. I know each week we get sales data from thousands of stores. What is the latest, dare I ask this, what is the latest sales survey, FDRA sales survey look like?
Yeah, we're still seeing, 99% sales decline from this week this year compared to the same week last year. The numbers are historic in the negative sense, Andy. And so we are seeing a little bit of growth in e-commerce, but as we've talked about on this flash briefing before, the cost to fulfill an e-commerce order is higher, significantly higher than that of a pair of shoes sold in brick and mortar retail. And there's just not enough sales out there to capture the lost opportunities and demand with the brick and mortar retail stores being closed. And as the governors announced today, the Northeast governors, that they're thinking about a regional approach to opening back the economy in the Northeast. That will be so key to our members and to their retail stores. And so we're going to be paying keen attention to that. And we all know that we passed just one of the Super Bowl times of our sales year, the Easter holiday, where so many people go out and buy new shoes and new sandals, go to church and go to brunch, spend time with family and friends. And that opportunity was lost. Although I spent my Easter Sunday on multiple Zoom calls with my church, I was not wearing my Sunday best. I can tell you that, Andy. And I think that we have passed both the Easter holiday as an opportunity to increase sales, and now all eyes are back to school. As far off as that might seem, those sales are starting to pick up in July and August, and that's just around the corner. And we'll have to see where we are as it relates to retail at that point.
Before we leave, one question about that. Then, if we're eyeing up back to school sales and really focusing on that to try to get us back out of the hole here, are we going to see some shortages because production in China has grinded to a halt as brands have canceled orders or just told them to shelter those orders in place in the warehousing? Obviously, we brought in a lot of product right before Chinese New Year, like we always do. So right now there seems to be enough stock. There'll probably be liquidations. There'll probably be all kinds of sales and discounts in order to move that. But as we move through this and that product starts to filter through, we're not restocking some of these sneakers coming through. So is that a big concern in the fall when we start seeing kind of scarcity in some of our products?
Yeah, I think it is a concern, Andy. And obviously, as you know, we have a diverse industry with lots of different demands as it relates to what products available, and some of the classics that are out there, the Vans and the Chuck Taylors and those types of shoes that sell very well this time of year heading into back to school. I don't know what kind of shortages we'll see necessarily to some of the classics, but I can tell you that we're not even sure what demand will look like, and if back to school will happen in the traditional sense, as most of our kids are now learning online at this point. And that's what makes this entire time frame so difficult, because it takes 18 months to 12 to 18 to 24 months to design and develop a pair of shoes. And when you can't even figure out what's going to happen in the next 18 weeks or 6 weeks relative to the demand, it is so hard to plan. And so I just think our members are so focused on the here and now, rightfully so, trying to save that cash, trying to ensure that they can continue to operate and be ready to go once the store's open, that they'll worry about product assortment and availability when the time comes. But demand planning is just too hard to do at this point in time, I think.
Anything we didn't cover that we need to cover on this flash briefing before we sign off?
I don't think so. I would just encourage everyone to stay connected. You know how to stay connected with us. If you're furloughed, doesn't mean you're furloughed with FDRA, Andy. And so make sure that you get us your information so that we can stay in contact with you, and you can be on the next FDRA member call every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern.
Great. And a reminder, you can sign up for those with your personal email accounts at fdra.org. There's a banner there to sign up through that, or you can just email info@fdra.org, and we will add you to our list to keep you informed. Matt, thank you very much. Folks, please be safe. And